Human culture was a hidden drug she couldn't resist as Pixis, alien runaway, stalked towards the unsuspecting boy walking home from school. 16-year-old Billy Foster was your average high school gamer geek, more into sci-fi flicks and video games than girls or grades. But his world was about to collide with a secret that would put his life and all of humanity at risk. The glint of metal in the forest caught Billy's eye. A strange spacecraft, saucer-shaped and shimmering, landed in the woods near his house. Heart pounding, Billy crept closer. Was this real? An actual UFO? The hatch hissed open and out stepped the most stunning girl he'd ever seen. Shimmering purple skin, glowing amber eyes, an otherworldly beauty. She was Nigen, an alien race humanity had only rumors of. Advanced, isolationist, and now, standing right in front of him. "I'm Pixis," she said, her voice making his skin tingle. "I ran away, came to find you." "Me?" Billy gaped. "Why?" Pixis blushed lavender. "I saw videos of human boys. You're so alive, not like Nigen males. Dull, lifeless, passive. I had to meet you, had to experience your world." Mind reeling, Billy realized what this meant. Her presence could change history, alter the course of humanity. But if her people found out she was here, fascinated by humans, there'd be hell to pay. For her and Earth. An alarm shrieked from Pixis's ship, making them jump. "They found me missing already. Please, you have to hide me. I can't go back. I won't. I want to live among you." Billy swallowed hard. This could be the end of life as he knew it. The Nigeans were light years ahead technologically. If they thought Pixis was a captive or a threat, it'd be war. A war Earth would lose. But the fire in her eyes, the pleading in her voice, the chance to be the first human to really know an alien, he couldn't resist. Adrenaline surging, he made a choice that could damn or save them all. "Come with me." Stuffing Pixis into his sister's clothes, he snuck the alien into his house, heart hammering. One wrong move, and it was all over. He had to make this work. Had to help her live as a human. Even if it meant the whole world finding out the truth that we were not alone, that aliens were real. And one had just moved in next door, chasing a dream of living life like a human. A thrilling dream that could turn into humanity's worst nightmare if Billy slipped up. Game on. Billy shoves open the creaky back door of the mall, blinking against the bright sunlight. Pixis stumbles out after him, her alien eyes struggling to adjust. They both pause, scanning the empty alleyway for any signs of pursuit. Billy's heart hammers as he realizes the gravity of their situation. An alien on the run, her people hell-bent on dragging her back home, and him caught in the middle of it all. "We can't stay out in the open," he says, grabbing Pixis's hand. Her skin is soft and cool, nothing like a human's. "They'll spot us for sure. We need to find somewhere to lay low and figure out our next move." Pixis nods, her face tight with fear. "I'm sorry, Billy. I never meant to put you in danger like this." Billy squeezes her hand, trying to muster a reassuring smile. "Hey, I'm the one who snuck you home, remember? I'm in this with you now, for better or worse." They set off down the alley, sticking close to the walls. Billy's mind races as he tries to think of somewhere safe to hide. His house is out of the question. It'll be the first place the Nigeans look. Same goes for any of his usual hangouts. They need somewhere off the grid, somewhere no one would think to look for a teenage boy and his alien fugitive friend. As they hurry down a side street, a thought hits Billy. His Uncle Ron, his mom's eccentric brother. The guy was a total recluse, living out in the middle of nowhere in some old cabin. Billy had only been there once, years ago. But he remembers how remote it was. Miles from the nearest town, no neighbors for ages. The perfect place to disappear. "I think I know somewhere we can go," Billy says, picking up the pace. "My uncle's old cabin out in the woods. It's really isolated. Nobody around for miles." Pixis's eyes widen with hope. "You think we'll be safe there?" "Safer than here, that's for sure." Billy leads them down another alley, heading for the outskirts of town. It's a long walk, but we can't risk public transit. We'll have to hoof it. They walk for hours, sticking to back roads and wooded paths. Billy's nerves are fried, jumping at every snapped twig or distant car engine. He keeps imagining Nijin agents leaping out from behind every tree, shuttles swooping down on them from above. But luck seems to be on their side. They don't encounter a single soul. The sun is setting by the time they reach the cabin. It's just as Billy remembers it. Small, rustic, nestled in a clearing deep in the woods. He tries the door, saying a silent prayer, and nearly collapses with relief when it swings open. His uncle never was big on security. Inside, the cabin is musty and cramped, but blessedly empty. Billy does a quick sweep to make sure they're alone while Pixis sinks onto the threadbare couch, exhaustion etched on her alien features. "We should be safe here, at least for a little while," Billy says, peering cautiously out the window at the darkening forest. "Long enough to catch our breath and make a plan." Pixis looks up at him, her amber eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "Billy, I'm so sorry. I never should have come here, never should have put you in this position. My people, they won't stop until they find me. And if they think you're helping me..." She shakes her head, unable to finish the thought. Billy sits next to her, putting a tentative arm around her trembling shoulders. "I'm not going to let them take you, Pixis. We'll figure something out, I promise." She leans into him, resting her head on his shoulder. For a moment they just sit there, two unlikely allies bound together by circumstance and secrets. Outside, the forest comes alive with the sounds of the night, crickets and owls blissfully unaware of the intergalactic drama unfolding in their midst. In the skies above, the Nijian ship continues to circle, scanners sweeping the ground below. The commander paces his bridge, his frustration mounting with each fruitless report from his ground teams. "Find her," he growls to his subordinates. "I don't care what it takes. Find the girl and bring her back, before she does any more damage." His eyes narrow as he stares at the view screen, at the teeming human cities spread out beneath them. "And if the natives give you any trouble, well, you know what to do." Night has fully fallen by the time Billy risks turning on a light in the cabin. He rummages through the meager supplies, managing to scrounge up some old canned goods and bottled water. Not exactly a feast, but it'll keep them going for a day or two. Pixis picks at the food, her mind clearly elsewhere. Billy can practically see the gears turning in her head, the weight of her choices bearing down on her slender shoulders. "Tell me about your world," Billy says softly, hoping to distract her. "What's it like where you come from?" Pixis smiles wanly, pushing aside her barely touched meal. "It's beautiful, in its way, but so stifling. Everything is ordered, controlled, predetermined. There's no room for deviation, for individuality." She looks at Billy, her eyes glowing in the dim light. "Not like here. Here, you humans, you're so vibrant, so alive. Every one of you unique, following your own path. It's wonderful." She reaches out, touches his cheek with a cool hand. "That's why I had to come, to see it for myself, to be a part of it, even if only for a little while." Billy covers her hand with his, marveling at the strange smoothness of her skin. "I'm glad you did," he murmurs. "I'm glad I met you, Pixis, no matter what happens." The moment stretches between them, delicate and shimmering with unspoken possibilities. Then Pixis pulls away, curling into herself on the couch. "You should get some sleep," she says softly. "I'll keep watch. If anything happens, I'll wake you." Billy wants to argue, to insist on staying up with her, but the adrenaline crash is hitting hard. His body feels heavy, his mind fogged with exhaustion. He nods, stretching out on the dusty carpet. "Okay, but wake me in a few hours. We'll take turns." His eyes are already sliding shut, his voice slurring slightly. "And Pixis, we'll get through this, together, I promise." The last thing he sees as he drifts off is Pixis's face, her alien features soft with affection and worry in the faint light. Silently, she reaches out and brushes a strand of hair from his forehead, a gesture achingly tender in its unfamiliarity. Then Billy is asleep, lost to dreams of purple skin and starscapes, of desperate flights and daring escapes. And through it all, the sense of a hand in his, cool and strong and holding on for dear life as the world spins madly around them. In the darkened cabin, Pixis keeps her solitary vigil, amber eyes fixed on the door, ears straining for the sound of approaching footsteps. Outside, the night deepens, shrouding them in its quiet shadows, as the search for a fugitive alien and her human companion rages on. Billy's heart pounded as he crouched behind a twisted metal outcropping, watching the rebel scout disappear into the shadows. The alien landscape stretched before him, all jagged spires and swirling purple mists. He touched his face, still marveling at the smooth, cool texture of his newly purple skin. "This is insane," he muttered, his voice carrying an unfamiliar resonance. A low hum filled the air as a Nijin patrol craft glided overhead. Billy pressed himself flat against the rocky ground, hardly daring to breathe. The craft passed without incident, but the close call left him shaking. Following the scout's instructions, Billy picked his way through a labyrinth of sharp-edged boulders. His eyes, now glowing amber, pierced the gloom with unnatural clarity. He spotted the hidden entrance, a narrow fissure barely wide enough for a body to slip through. Squeezing inside, Billy found himself in a rough-hewn tunnel. The walls pulsed with a faint bioluminescence, casting eerie shadows as he moved deeper underground. The air grew thick and humid, clinging to his skin like a damp shroud. After what felt like hours of twisting passages, the tunnel opened into a vast cavern. Makeshift structures dotted the uneven floor, while alien technology hummed and blinked along the walls. Dozens of Nijins moved about with purpose, their purple skin shimmering in the dim light. "Halt!" a gruff voice rang out. Billy froze as a burly Nijin stepped from the shadows, leveling a strange weapon at his chest. "Identify yourself, intruder!" Billy's mind raced, grasping for the coded phrase he'd memorized. I seek the star that fell to earth," he stammered in halting Nijin. The guard's eyes narrowed, then widened in recognition. He lowered his weapon. "By the void, you actually made it. Follow me, quickly!" They wove through the bustling rebel base, passing curious glances and whispered conversations. Billy's alien senses picked up fragments. The human. Pixis's friend. Madness. They reached a crude command center, screens flickering with stolen data and intercepted transmissions. And there, hunched over a holographic display, was a familiar figure. "Pixis," Billy breathed. She spun, her amber eyes widening in shock. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, drinking in the impossible sight. Then Pixis launched herself across the room, colliding with Billy in a tangle of limbs and choked sobs. "You came," she whispered, her face buried in his chest. "You actually came for me." Billy held her tight, his genetically altered body trembling with relief and pent-up emotion. "Of course I did. I promised, didn't I?" Their reunion was cut short by a sharp bark of alien language. They turned to see a scarred Nijin striding towards them, his face a mask of grim urgency. "I am Thrak," he said in accented English. "And while I appreciate this touching moment, we have no time for sentiment. Corvus moves Pixis off-world within hours. We must act now, or all is lost." Pixis squeezed Billy's hand, then stepped back, her face hardening with perseverance. "He's right. We need to go over the plan. Every second counts." They gathered around the holographic display, joined by a handful of rebel lieutenants. Thrak's clawed fingers danced over the controls, bringing up schematics of an orbital structure. "The prison station," he explained. "Heavily guarded, state-of-the-art security. But we've identified a vulnerability." As Thrak outlined the daring rescue attempt, Billy felt a cold knot of fear form in his stomach. The odds were astronomical, the danger off the charts. But as he looked at Pixis, saw the fire in her eyes and the set of her jaw, he knew there was no turning back. They had come too far, risked too much. It was time to finish this, one way or another. "Let's do it," Billy said, meeting Thrax's intense gaze. "Tell us what you need." The rebel leader nodded, a hint of approval in his alien features. "Very well. We move out in 10 minutes. May the void have mercy on us all." As the rebels sprang into action around them, Billy pulled Pixis close one last time. "Whatever happens up there," he murmured, "I'm glad I found you. I'm glad we had this chance." Pixis touched his cheek, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "So am I, Billy. So am I." With a final lingering look, they separated, each moving to their assigned positions. The cavern buzzed with nervous energy as weapons were checked and last-minute instructions given. Billy took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. The first phase of the operation was underway. In mere minutes, they would be hurtling towards the stars, towards a confrontation that would decide the fate of two worlds. Billy's hands shook as he double-checked his gear, but his voice was steady as he spoke the ancient human prayer. "Once more unto the breach, dear friends, once more." Billy's heart thundered in his chest as he crouched behind a twisted metal bulkhead, the acrid smell of ozone filling his nostrils. Plasma bolts sizzled past, leaving scorch marks on the pristine walls of the Nigean prison station. He glanced at Thrak, the scarred rebel leader, who nodded grimly. "Now!" Thrak barked. Billy sprang into action, his borrowed Nigean skin tingling with adrenaline. He sprinted down the corridor, dodging energy blasts with inhuman agility. The rebels' intel proved accurate. The guard patterns were exactly as predicted. Billy pounded his fist into a control panel, and a security door hissed shut behind him, cutting off their pursuers. "This way," he panted, leading the team deeper into the station's labyrinthine depths. They fought their way through checkpoint after checkpoint, leaving unconscious Nigean guards in their wake. Billy's disguise allowed him to move freely, disabling security systems and creating diversions while the rebels struck from the shadows. Finally, they reached the high-security detention block. Billy's hands shook as he pulled out the rebel device, pressing it against the cell door's locking mechanism. Seconds stretched into eternity as the device worked its magic. With a soft click, the heavy door slid open. "Pixis," Billy breathed. She stood there, bruised but unbowed, her amber eyes blazing with defiance. For a heartbeat, they simply stared at each other. Then Pixis launched herself into his arms, her cool skin pressed against his. "You came," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Before Billy could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Harsh red light bathed the corridor as Corvus's guards mobilized. "We need to move," Thrak growled, his alien features taut with urgency. They raced through the prison's winding corridors, the sound of boots and energy weapons growing ever closer. Plasma bolts ricocheted off walls as Nigean soldiers poured into the hallways. As they fought their way towards the extraction point, Pixis shouted over the din of battle, "Billy, I have to tell you something." He ducked as a bolt of energy sailed over his head. "Now." "I let myself be captured," she yelled, dropping to one knee to avoid another blast. "It was the only way to get intel on Corvus's plans." Billy's stomach lurched. "You what?" Before he could process this revelation, they rounded a corner and found themselves face to face with a wall of Nigean troops. At their center stood Corvus himself, his eyes glowing with malevolent purpose. "So the little rebel and her human pet," Corvus sneered, hefting a massive weapon that crackled with experimental energy. "How touching." Plasma erupted from the weapon, carving furrows in the deck plating. Billy grabbed Pixis and dove for cover as the air itself seemed to ignite. "The ship!" Thrak bellowed, gesturing towards a docking bay just visible through the chaos. Billy and Pixis sprinted for the rebel craft, energy blasts nipping at their heels. They stumbled up the boarding ramp, collapsing onto the deck as the ship's engines roared to life. "Hold on!" the pilot, Banks, shouted from the cockpit. The rebel ship rocketed forward, straight towards the station's glowing reactor core. Alarms shrieked as they hurtled closer and closer to certain destruction. At the last possible second, Banks yanked the controls. The ship's hull scraped against the reactor housing, the resulting explosion catapulting them into the void of space. "Initiating emergency jump," Banks called out. Stars blurred into streaks of light as they made the desperate leap to light speed, leaving the shattered remains of the prison station far behind. In the sudden quiet of the ship's hold, Billy turned to Pixis. "Are you okay?" She nodded, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "Billy, I'm so sorry. I should have told you about my plan, but—" He cut her off, pulling her close. "It's okay, I understand, but we need to know what you learned." Pixis took a deep breath. "Corvus has a cyber weapon. He plans to use it to disable Earth's defenses and communications. It's worse than we thought." Billy's blood ran cold. "We need to warn Earth." But as the adrenaline faded, the true extent of their situation became clear. Warning lights flashed on every console, and the ship's engines sputtered and wheezed. Banks's voice crackled over the intercom. "We took heavy damage in the escape. We don't have enough power for the intergalactic jump." Billy's heart sank. "What are our options?" Pixis studied a star chart, her brow furrowed in concentration. "There's an inhabited world nearby, primitive, but they might have what we need for repairs." As the crippled rebel ship limped towards this alien refuge, Billy couldn't shake the gnawing fear in his gut. Every second of delay brought Corvus closer to unleashing his terrible plan on an unsuspecting Earth. Worse still, Billy knew that Corvus's forces would soon uncover the truth about Pixis's mission to Earth, and his own involvement. The consequences of that revelation were too horrifying to contemplate. Billy reached out, taking Pixis's hand in his as the unknown planet grew larger in the view screen. Despite everything, he felt a surge of hope. Together, they had already accomplished the impossible. Now, they just had to do it again, with the fate of two worlds hanging in the balance. The makeshift ship shuddered violently as it plunged through Earth's atmosphere. Billy gripped the edge of his seat, squeezing hard, as warning klaxons blared throughout the craft. Sparks erupted from overloaded consoles, filling the air with the acrid stench of burning circuitry. "We're losing structural integrity," Banks shouted from the pilot's chair, his hands flying over the controls. "The heat shielding can't take this kind of re-entry." Pixis rushed to an auxiliary panel, her fingers dancing across the alien interface. "Rerouting power to the shields. It won't be enough, but it might buy us a few more seconds." Billy stared out the viewport, watching in horror as the ground rushed up to meet them. Cities sprawled below, their skylines marred by pillars of smoke and the hulking silhouettes of Nigen war machines. His heart pounded in his chest as he realized the full extent of Corvus's invasion. "There!" Thrak bellowed, pointing at a clearing amidst a dense forest. "It's our only shot!" Banks wrenched the controls, fighting against the failing systems to angle their descent. The ship groaned in protest, metal twisting and warping under the immense stress. "Brace for impact!" Banks roared. Billy wrapped his arms around Pixis, pulling her close as the ground filled their view. They hit hard, the impact jolting through every bone in his body. The sound of tearing metal filled his ears as the ship carved a deep furrow into the earth, trees snapping like twigs against its hull. When the world finally stopped spinning, Billy found himself sprawled on the deck, ears ringing. He pushed himself up, fighting waves of nausea. "Pixis," he croaked. "Here," she answered, her voice weak but steady. She emerged from behind a toppled crate, a thin line of purple blood trickling from a cut on her forehead. Billy surveyed the wreckage of their craft. Smoke billowed from shattered panels, and the acrid tang of leaking fuel filled the air. "We need to get out of here now." They stumbled through the twisted corridors, helping injured crew members as they went. Thrak carried an unconscious Banks over his shoulder. As they emerged into the crisp earth air, Billy's heart sank. In the distance, he could see the menacing shapes of Nathan dropships descending towards their crash site. "Into the trees," Pixis urged, supporting a limping rebel soldier. "We need to find cover and regroup." As they melted into the forest shadows, the weight of their situation pressed down on Billy. They were stranded on an Earth under siege, cut off from any allies, with Corvus forces closing in. He glanced at Pixis, seeing the same mix of fear and tenacity in her eyes. What now? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Pixis' teeth gritted as she scanned the horizon. We find a way to stop Corvus, whatever it takes. The distant rumble of Nigean war machines echoed through the trees, a chilling reminder of the impossible odds they faced. Billy nodded, steeling himself for the battles to come. They had crossed galaxies and cheated death to reach this moment. Now, the fate of Earth and countless other worlds rested in their hands. The rebel ship careened through Earth's atmosphere, a blazing comet of twisted metal and failing systems. Billy's knuckles turned white as he gripped his seat, the craft bucking wildly around him. Beside him, Pixis's amber eyes were wide with fear and purpose. Alarms blared as Banks fought the controls, his face a mask of concentration. Come on, you piece of junk, he growled through gritted teeth. Just a little more. But fate had other plans. With a sickening lurch, the ship's power cut out entirely. Banks's eyes went wide. We've lost everything. Brace for... His words were cut off as they slammed into the ground. Billy's world became a cacophony of screeching metal and shattering glass. He felt himself thrown forward, then sideways, tumbling end over end as the ship carved a deep furrow into the earth. When the world finally stopped spinning, Billy found himself pinned beneath a tangle of debris. His head throbbed, and the acrid stench of burning electronics filled his nostrils. Ignoring the pain lancing through his body, he clawed his way free of the wreckage. Pixis! He called out, his voice hoarse. Pixis, where are you? For a heart-stopping moment, there was no response. Then, from beneath a crumpled bulkhead, he heard a weak groan. Billy scrambled over, heaving the twisted metal aside to reveal Pixis. A gash on her forehead oozed purple blood, but her eyes were open and alert. Billy, she whispered, reaching for him. He pulled her into a tight embrace, feeling her alien heartbeat against his chest. Around them, other rebels began to stir. Banks emerged from the shattered cockpit, looking dazed but alive. Thrak helped a limping comrade to his feet. They had survived, but for how long? We need to move, Billy urged, helping Pixis stand. Corvus will have detected our crash. They worked quickly, salvaging what they could from the wreckage. Weapons, medical supplies, and portable tech were hastily gathered. Pixis activated a battered scanner, her face grim as she studied the readout. The invasion is widespread, she reported. Major cities are under attack, but there's no sign of enemy forces converging on us yet. Billy's mind raced. This might be our only chance. Pixis, your alien tech. Could you break through Corvus's jamming? Send a warning to Earth's military? Pixis hesitated, then nodded. It's risky, but possible. I'll need to boost the signal. They worked feverishly, cobbling together a makeshift transmitter from the ship's wreckage. As the others stood guard, Pixis recorded her message, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. To Earth's defenders, this is Pixis, a rebel against the Nigean Empire. Corvus plans to disable your defenses from within, then crush all resistance. You must... A searing bolt of plasma cut through the air, missing Pixis by inches. Billy tackled her to the ground as the sky erupted with weapons fire. Sleek, deadly drones swooped overhead, raining destruction. Take cover, Thrak bellowed, returning fire with a salvaged Nigean weapon. The rebels scrambled for shelter behind the twisted remains of their ship. Billy's heart pounded as he saw Nigean dropships descending, disgorging waves of shock troops. A massive combat walker stomped forward, its weapons primed. The transmission! Pixis shouted over the chaos. I need to finish! Banks nodded grimly. We'll buy you time. Billy, help me with this. Together, they jury-rigged the ship's engines into a crude energy weapon. With a deafening roar, a lance of pure energy sliced through the Nigean lines, buying them precious seconds. It's done, Pixis called out. But they know we're here now. Then we run, Billy said, helping a wounded rebel to his feet. Into the forest, now! They fled into the thick woods, the sounds of pursuit close behind. Billy's lungs burned as they ran, dodging low-hanging branches and leaping over fallen logs. Overhead, hunter drones scanned the canopy, their weapons ready to unleash death. As they paused to catch their breath, Billy turned to Pixis. "We need a new plan. If we can reach a human resistance cell, maybe broadcast your existence to the world." Pixis nodded, her eyes gleaming with fierce intelligence. "I can calculate the most likely location of a surviving military base, but we'll have to move fast." A plasma bolt sizzled past, scorching the bark of a nearby tree. The hunt was on. "Lead the way," Billy said, hefting his weapon. "We've got a planet to save." As they plunged deeper into the wilderness, Billy couldn't shake the weight of their situation. They were battered, outnumbered, and alone on an Earth under siege. But as he looked at Pixis, saw the unwavering persistence in her alien eyes, he felt a spark of hope. They had crossed galaxies to reach this moment. Now it was time to fight for humanity's future. The rebels pushed through the dense undergrowth, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. Billy's muscles burned as he helped a wounded comrade navigate the treacherous terrain. Above them, the ominous hum of Nigean hunter-killer drones filled the air. "There," Pixis whispered, pointing ahead. "I recognize those structures from my research. We're nearing Chicago." As they emerged from the forest, the devastated skyline of the once great city came into view. Smoke billowed from shattered skyscrapers, and the streets were littered with debris. In the distance, a fortified compound stood out amid the chaos. "The National Guard Armory," Pixis explained. "It's our best chance for allies and equipment." They approached cautiously, the sounds of battle growing louder with each step. Rounding a corner, they came upon a scene of frantic combat. Human soldiers in battered armor fought desperately against waves of cybernetic Nigean troops. The defenders were clearly outgunned and running low on ammunition. Billy turned to the others, his voice low and urgent. "We need to act fast. Thrack Banks. Take the left flank. Pixis and I will go right. Hit them hard and fast." On Billy's signal, they burst from cover. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air as they caught the Nigean forces in a devastating crossfire. The alien troops, unprepared for an attack from behind, fell in droves. In the confusion, Pixis darted towards the human lines. "Captain," she called out, spotting an officer barking orders. "I'm Pixis. We need to talk." The man spun, his eyes widening at the sight of the alien rebel. For a moment, his weapon wavered uncertainly. "Captain Rhodes," Pixis said quickly, "I know this is a shock, but please listen. I have critical information about the invasion. Your forces have been receiving my coded transmissions." Rhodes hesitated, then nodded sharply. "Inside, now." As they rushed into the armory, Pixis laid out Corvus's plans in rapid-fire detail. Rhodes listened intently, his face growing grimmer by the second. "Christ," he muttered. "If what you're saying is true..." He turned to a nearby soldier. "Get her to the comms array. We need to broadcast this to every remaining outpost." They sprinted through corridors filled with wounded soldiers and dwindling supplies. Just as they reached the communications center, the world exploded around them. A blinding flash lit up the sky, followed by a thunderous roar. The armory shook violently, chunks of concrete raining down. Through a gaping hole in the ceiling, Pixis caught sight of a massive Nigean destroyer hovering above. "No!" she cried out, recognizing the ship's markings. "It's Corvus! He's found us!" As klaxons blared and soldiers scrambled to defensive positions, Pixis grabbed Billy's arm. "We need a new plan, fast!" They huddled with Banks, shouting to be heard over the din of battle. Pixis' eyes darted frantically between her companions and the looming threat outside. "There's only one way," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "We hijack a Nigean dropship, get to Corvus's command ship, and transmit from there." Billy's face contorted in anguish. "Pixis, no, it's suicide!" She placed a hand on his cheek, her touch gentle despite the chaos around them. "It's our only chance to save Earth. To save everyone." Tears welled in Billy's eyes as he nodded reluctantly. They gathered the remaining rebels, outlining their desperate plan. As Rhodes's forces provided covering fire, they made a mad dash for a grounded Nigean dropship. Banks slid into the pilot's seat, his hands flying over the alien controls. With a roar of engines, they lifted off, accelerating towards the massive destroyer above. Enemy fire erupted around them, the dropship shuddering under the assault. "Hold on!" Banks yelled as they hurtled towards the destroyer's hangar bay. Billy squeezed Pixis's hand, his heart pounding as they prepared to face whatever waited for them within Corvus's stronghold.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.